Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host and producer of Pause and Rewind, the podcast that chats to changemakers, thought leaders, and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And, let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now, but how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences, realisations and relationships in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now, because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes and a little of what makes our guests tick. So whether you're here for insights or inspo or simply want to know about your heroes, this podcast is for you. You might never know someone's story, but if you pay attention, you'll hear it, you'll see it and you'll feel it. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hey there, Lauren. Welcome to Pause and Rewind. I am over the moon to have you here.
Hello, Neil. It's good to see you again. It's been a while since, November? It's nice to see you again.
You too. Firstly, to you and the listeners, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, happy St. Patrick's Day. Today is St. Patrick's Day in the island of Ireland and Northern Ireland, so it's a public holiday, so people will probably be having a jolly old good time today.
They sure will. All the Guinness, including the alcohol-free, obviously.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I couldn't think of a better guest to have on today, so thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with a question that I ask all my guests, and that is, what does the world look like for Lauren Dempsey right now?
The world looks like a crazy place for me right now. There's just so much going on at the minute in my professional life. I was recently promoted to like a leadership role, and that's only after joining the company for 6 months. So last summer, I took a very bold opportunity or bold decision, I should say, to leave my current corporate job and sort of search for a new challenge, essentially. And I signed up with a company called Group, who basically, once they heard that I was available, were happy to have me on board. And yeah, within 6 months, I've been promoted to a leadership role, which has been a super awesome achievement. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about my professional life a little bit later, but in terms of my personal life, there's just so much going on. I've got a competition coming up in pole dancing. I've got lots of activism and advocacy work that I'm doing as well across the board, which no doubt we'll get into. But yeah, it's just non-stop fun with me at the minute.
I love that. And I get to see it all. And I was so glad we met at the Trans and City Awards back in November. And to see you get recognised for your advocacy work as well. You know, what did it mean to you?
It was a special moment because it was unexpected, you know. Obviously, the way the Trans and the City Awards works is you're nominated from your peers, essentially. And then obviously they do like a judging panel where they decide based on the evidence that you provide. So I think it was a super special moment because a lot of people do take a lot of interest in my story because I am quite open about a lot of things. You know, I don't hide a lot of stuff about my own personal transition, and where I can, I try to help educate people. I think one of the things that kind of stood out for me is that I'm trying not to leave Northern Ireland behind, you know, because sometimes people tend to forget about Northern Ireland, and sometimes even in our own country, people tend to forget there's more than Northern Ireland in the UK. You've got England, Scotland, Wales, and obviously Northern Ireland mix up that. I'm trying to be one of the voices to keep Northern Ireland on the map, you know, and give us exposure. So yeah, it was a super proud moment that was shared with yourself and many others, room.
Yeah, it was a gorgeous evening full of incredible people. And I do love that the Trans in the City Awards, they do recognise people in Northern Ireland, in Wales, in Scotland, you know, when you think about going out to the other nations. And for me, I think it's always really important to not make things so England or London centric. It's particularly important. What you do in your activism is particularly important for trans and queer folk in rural areas, right?
Yeah. Yeah, as a person who's from a rural background myself, you know, I lived in a town where population was probably 1,000 to 1,500 people, so very small. And there was like 2 churches, a cafe, a shop, and a bar, and it was the same place that you're seeing every day, you know. So being in that rural community, you're living in each other's pockets because your neighbour knows you, your following neighbour knows you, and everybody kind of knows you. So no matter what you do, you're kind of always in the open eye of looking up, well, did you hear about wee Mary down the road, or did you hear about wee John down the road? And yeah, having that voice from a rural background is important because it sort of gives people coming behind that opportunity to realize that they can be themselves, regardless if they were gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, or whatever kind of they identify as, you know. So, and I'm not afraid to kind of to my rural background because it's an important part of my life because it's where I spent a large part of my life before I ventured into the big city life.
Yeah. And obviously kind of like, big city life makes it not easier, but there's an anonymity, right, that we have sometimes when as queer people we move into big cities. But do think it's important that we don't forget our background and out when where we're from. We often have complicated relationships with where we're from. How do you feel when you go into rural places now? What's your relationship with it like?
So that's a bit of a funny question, and I've got a funny answer to it. It's not really funny, I suppose. It's quite so if I think back to my previous times, years ago, so where
Yeah.
I'm from was predominantly a white Irish/British area. Seeing anybody outside that norm, be it skin color, religion, nationality, was a strange thing because you weren't used to it. Whereas when you go into city life, you could be seeing people from different ethnic backgrounds, different ethnic minorities, different nationalities, just basically different backgrounds. So for me, going back into a rural community, I kind of feel like that person who might have felt like a bit of a strange person coming into a town where all they were seeing was white British Irish people. And when you're in an area where maybe there's not that diversity, you obviously are going to stand out. So you are essentially. But I'm there. People want to come and talk to me, and people do come and talk to me in the rural areas. People don't forget me, and I don't forget them either. Because some of them are the people that are championing me, every day, and are following my own personal journey. And they're sort of there in the background, throwing their hands up in there and saying, you're doing a good job, and keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And it is important to be visible to people in those spaces because they're often left behind.
They are. Like, I've had a few people reach out to me in confidence from the rural community and saying, you're an inspiration to us because these people are quite closeted within their own personal journeys, and they're finding comfort within my own journey because it's helping them sort of come out in their own ways and understand how they can come out to, for example, their family or their friends or the local community. 9 times out of 10, they realize they kind of have to move away from the area to be able to fully strive, so to do. And that's kind of what I found when I was kind of deciding, do I want to go live in the city or do I want to continue to live in the country? It's an interesting one whenever those people who are afraid to come out and say, thank you for being you. And sort of it helps me sort of move forward in my own life.
Yeah. Yeah. And from being a role model for those in rural places to also being a trans role model in corporate spaces as well, because when we look at queer representation generally, but when we really hone in on trans representation in leadership, but also beyond leadership in corporate spaces in generally, there is a real lack of representation, and you're also smashing that.
Yeah, there is a real lack of representation within corporate life. Some of the bigger corporate companies, it's hard to be visible in some of those bigger companies because they'll lay your number. In smaller companies, you can be a little bit more visible. When I came out in my previous company, Kanos, it was a very supportive environment I was in, and people around me were very supportive. They had supported me in my own personal journey, and I think I had built a solid foundation of my career up before I come out, because before I kind of come out, I was very focused heavily quite on my career and trying to prove people wrong who I grew up with, because a lot of people didn't really back me from an education point of view because they thought I would be a failure from the get-go. So a lot of my success career-wise has come before I come out, but being so successful in my career and also being trans has been quite an amazing journey, because it sort of puts a different perspectives on things. People can kind of say, oh yeah, well actually I can be myself in the work environment. Yeah, there are some corporate lives that are maybe a wee bit more trickier to come out in, but it's important to sort of show that representation. And you have a previous guest on that have corporate life, so it's important to see more of those voices coming out and just saying, hey, we're just human beings at the end of the day. Let us be ourselves, and you'll get the best out of us at the end of the day, because that is what you do. When you are being your authentic self, that's when you deliver the best results.
Absolutely. And I think because obviously I work a lot in inclusion, right? And I think
Yeah.
there's a tendency to, particularly in corporate spaces, to focus on people's lived experience and identity. But actually, what about if we stop focusing on that? And what about if we focused on people's expertise, their skills, their success? Because that's often overlooked when we talk about when we constantly just focus on our identities and experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to have all aspects covered
Mm.
because yes, it's good to be visible, but you need to be ensuring what you're doing is, you've got experience and you've got skills in it. And sometimes people can struggle to learn things, and sometimes people can not struggle. I'm someone who's a little bit of a slow learner myself, but it's important to have those experiences, talk about those lived
Mm.
experiences within the
Yeah.
working life. Whether it be dealing with customers, whether it be dealing with prospects, sales, or whatever it may be. Because I've quite a few funny stories with customers in the past with interactions. I'm not sure there's many of them I can talk about. There's probably one I can talk about, but I won't disclose the name of the customer or the name of the person, but if he's listening, he probably knows it's him. So there was a project I was on maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. It was a big digital transformational project, and they were implementing Workday. Basically, we were waiting on someone to join the call, and I think I was going on holiday at the time to Portugal. I don't know where the conversation came around, but we started talking about polls, and I just sort of chipped into the conversation. Now, yeah, I'm an amateur pole dancer, and the program manager turned around and said, "Lauren, I've never been made speechless before, but you literally just made me speechless." Whilst the other people on the call were having a little bit of a giggle of it. So, whilst it's important to have the actual experiences for the job, it's also important to be human sometimes
Yes.
because we can live in that moment where there's so many demands, but sometimes taking that a little bit of a break and having a little bit of an icebreaker, it's important as well to break it up.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And you know what? When we show that little bit of humanity, that bit of vulnerability, that bit of humor, we can
Yeah,
often bring people along,
yeah.
and it's a way of we can use that as a way to change hearts and minds.
Yeah, absolutely. I've changed a few hearts and minds with it as well because it's important to have a little bit of charisma and a bit of fun at the end of the day. Yeah, work life can be important, and you got to make sure you're doing the right thing, and obviously getting the bills paid and getting all the invoices processed for people's salaries. But at the end of the day, you got to have a little bit of fun on it as well. I always say if you are loving what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you love what you do?
I do. I do. Yes, there's times it's stressful, but it's
Yeah.
good stress. But I love what I do because I
Yeah.
have a good balance of work and I have a good balance of stuff I do outside of work.
You do. And how do you balance it all? Because you've got this busy corporate life in like, new promotion and such. You've got your activism, you've got your hobbies and your interests, pole dancing and lap dancing, which kind of I'm sure there's loads of people that do it, but not often people are not so open about doing it, right?
Yeah.
The clash between those two things, and there shouldn't be, but it is. How do you balance those different versions of Lauren?
It can be difficult at times, but it's just getting a good, structure in place. When I switch off from work and I just go into fun time. Whether that'll be going training for pole, whether that'll be switching on a games console, having a bit of fun on the games console, whether that'll be going out and seeing the mates, or whether that'll be going and seeing the mum, who's important in my life as well. It's just about having a healthy balance and being in a work environment that is supportive
Mm.
and also mindful of workload is also important because if you are in a work environment where it's maybe a little bit toxic, that can very easily switch off and you become less productive at home. And I did notice that myself for the period of time where I piled on lots and lots of weight. And when I changed a few things, I've suddenly lost that weight. And I think since I've seen you last, I think I've lost maybe 2.5 stone. So, so yes, whilst I'm busy corporate life and also busy hobby life, I'm also losing weight as well and just feeling fabulous.
Yeah, well, feeling fabulous, and you do look like you're loving life. Like I love it
Yeah.
when I see your poll updates. How did you discover a love of pole? I'd love to know what got you into it.
It's quite a funny thing because I kind of always seen I seen pole dancing when I was a little bit younger, but you always kind of had that when you seen pole, obviously it was relating to sex work, and there still is an element of sex work, obviously, within
Yeah,
pole, but you always kind of thought it was a little bit of a taboo area because, some people can see pole as quite taboo, especially when you look at Northern Ireland and especially in the rural communities. Like I can remember, someone telling me that, oh, did you hear that such and such from that town is doing pole dancing? Like I was the news of the city at that time, just because I was doing pole dancing. And why was I doing it? For health and fitness reasons. So how did I get into it? There's a pole studio in Belfast called Polar Size. Prior to COVID, I kind of had looked at what the options were. COVID came along and I was like, right, when COVID kind of kills itself or dies away and there's no lockdowns, I'll sign up to a pole class, and I've been hooked ever since. It also brings out the feminine energy. I have quite a lot of fun with it. I might not be a super professional at it, but I go for the health and the fitness reasons. And if I can put together a routine, which I do, I'm happy. I've got a cupboard full of high heels and skimpy outfits that I do when I perform, but I love it. It's just a part of me that just enjoys myself and has fun.
Absolute killer heels. I've seen them.
Yeah,
And it's also about that thing of you can enjoy something and you don't necessarily, it's not all about productivity or perfection or success. You can do something because you enjoy it. And with my
sure.
fitness journey, it started off because it started for pure vanity, to be honest with you, but it soon extended to something that I enjoyed, that was
Yeah,
really good for my mental health. And right now, with the current rhetoric for LGBTQ folk globally, but and particularly trans folk, anything that brings us joy and protects our well-being is worth pursuing, regardless of how good we are.
100%. It's so important to look at the positives in life right now. There's a lot of negatives that we'll talk about later on, but with so much negatives out there, it's important to focus on the positives because the more you focus on the negatives, the more bad energy you vibe in your body, and you don't want to do anything. Yes, it's important to acknowledge that times are tough at the minute, but
Yeah.
we just need a lot more happy people out there. We need a lot more positive people. We just need a lot of people just showing up and, hey, I'm being me. If you don't like it, I don't care. I'm just being me and move on. I'm going to go to the next person, you know. Yes, it's a struggle for some people, but the more positive, the better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when that's hard to access,
Hmm.
community is so important. And I know how important community is to you as well.
It is, and it's something I've tried to sort of build up with the team over at Not a Phase, who do the funding for different sporting classes for the trans community. So they obviously had a big focus on England. I'm not sort of dissing what Not a Phase did that time
No,
because,
you're
as
fine.
you said earlier on, there was a big focus on England and London with that area. And it's like, well, what about the people in Scotland? What about the people in Wales? What about the people in Northern Ireland? So maybe me, I'm a messy networker. I just go and talk to people randomly. Like I just reached out to you and said you're wearing a completely awesome jacket at the Trans City Awards. You know, so similar to a lot of these guys, I kind of reached out and I said, hey, you know, I'd be interested in getting some funding to do some sort of classes in Northern Ireland. What does that look like? So we had a few chats. We set up a starter pole class, which didn't get off the ground too well, and so we reset and we decided to set up a hit class. And we've had a successful hit class running now for 3 months in Northern Ireland, and we
Amazing.
have about 12 or 13 people in it. So I think we're doing that's across 2 nights of the week. So to bring together the community, especially the people I know in that class, some of them didn't have the confidence before joining the class, and now they have the confidence to be able to go out and maybe socialize in a mixed gender class because we all know the fitness world is a big scary place for us because people don't want us in certain places, you know.
Yeah.
But I think being around your community helps you build your own self confidence that allows you then to progress to do other things as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know some phenomenal people in the fitness space. Liz Ridgway, for example, is a friend of mine, and we've
Hmm.
had me and Liz have had conversations about this. And you know, even as a cis gay queer man, never thought these spaces were for me in terms of gyms and fitness, and it
Yeah,
took me a while to find my groove with it. But those spaces are for us, and particularly for yourself with pole, saying I belong here and unapologetically fucking owning it, which you do, is really powerful. And it's absolutely why you are a role model to so many other people, not just for the corporate work, not just for the
yeah,
activism, but for the way you are showing up for yourself.
yeah, absolutely. It's important to show up for yourself because at the end of the day, no one else is going to show up for you. You have to show
Yes.
up for yourself. I took a very brave decision 5 years ago in therapy to eventually come out, and it was on the 9th of February, which is about a month ago.
Okay.
5 years. I spent about 9 months in therapy at that point, and like even the therapist at that time kind of said to me, like, you had a lot of struggles when you started with me, but I didn't. I was refusing to sign you off until you felt more comfortable to be able to talk about what was your inner expressions. I found it very difficult to articulate what my inner feelings were. With a little bit of work with therapy, I was able to open up and sort of express myself and realize, hey, I can be myself. You know, I want to dress differently than I normally would because I want to wear those types of things, you know, be me at the end of the day. And one of the things I decided about 4.5 years ago is, fuck it, I want blue hair, you know, and I still have blue hair.
Yeah. Well, listen. Your blue hair is fabulous. I said it to you on the first night I met you. Your blue hair is
Yeah.
fabulous. You look fabulous in your pole outfits. And yeah, so grateful that our worlds collided. And I'm so excited to dive into your origin story. With that, Lauren, are you ready to pause and rewind?
Yes, I am ready to pause and rewind.
Here we go. Let's do this. Take me back. Tell me all about little Lauren.
So, little Lauren was born into a small family in rural Northern Ireland. Obviously, I was born a boy and went to a primary school that was very small, and went to a secondary school that also wasn't as small as the primary school, but it was still quite small. I was born with a cleft palate. So I had a few medical challenges, like my mum would have been taking me to the hospital quite a lot. So that was one of the things that people thought when I was born, the way I was born, I would have a lot of challenges, because I don't remember this myself, but my mum remembers it. There was a specialist consultant that assessed me as a child and was like, Mr. and Mrs. Dempsey, I've assessed this child for absolutely everything, but I cannot put my finger on the pulse. But there's one thing I can guarantee is this child will go on to be successful. And he was one of the very few people that really got behind me in terms of said, like, as long as you nourish this child will be successful. And my mum stuck to his word, and she supported and really sort of was one of my really inspirational role models I would look up to because of her determination. She had three other kids. A younger sister, an older brother, and an older sister. So, like, four is a handful, and my mum wasn't working at the time, so she was living at home. My dad was making the money for the family. I wouldn't say we had a tough upbringing, but we probably would have lived in the breadline for a period of time because money was tight within the family. My mum and dad always kind of found a way to support us, you know. So my family upbringing was very traditional. I didn't really get to see the world until I started traveling. When I left school, like, my dad wanted me to be an engineer, and he was like, "You're going to be the engineer of the family, and you're going to do electrician work." And I was like, "I don't really want to do that," because I did a week's work experience of it, and I was like, "This is not for me." I was like, there was two careers I wanted to do at that time, and there was one of them that I knew I was never going to be able to do, and the other one was kind of the backup. And the one that I was looking to do at one point was being a hairdresser. And the way I looked at it at that time, obviously, I was a straight male in the hairdressing industry. Yeah, you never really seen it because they're not natively you would have seen hairdressers were either gay men or straight women that were involved in those careers. So the second career aspiration I had was IT, computing. So I decided to follow the computing industry, and I met a crazy lot of people along the way and a lot of supportive people. And then when I started to see the world, I was like, yeah, there's more to life than the wee town that you're from, but it's important
Yeah.
not to forget the wee town that you're from.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a lot about me in the past in a bubble.
Yeah. Well, a whirlwind tour. Take me back to that little town. What were you like at school?
I was a quiet person in school, primary school. I was a class of, I always considered ourselves the Three Musketeers because there was three of us that sort of was always there. There was some years there were maybe four people. There were some years there were five, but there always was three. There was me and two others, essentially. So it was a very small class, a very small school. I don't know what it's like in England, but primary school was primary 1 to 7. And for us, I think the maximum number I seen in primary school was maybe about 55 pupils, which was very, very small.
Tiny.
Yes, my class, like I say, three. Some years was four, some years were five. There was some years where the class maybe only had two people. I think the biggest class had 9 in it, you know, so very, very small. So very traditional. Obviously, because I was on a statement of special needs learning, I had a little bit extra time with things. And then when I was leaving primary school, the special needs person I was under at the time was like, we need to send this child to a special needs secondary school, where I was like, actually, I want to go to mainstream secondary school. So my mum put up a fight for me, and I was able to go to the mainstream primary school. And I think that was one of the first times that I really proved that I was someone who was capable of doing something, you know, because whilst I was quiet, I wasn't book smart, you know, because I'm not getting A stars, I'm not getting A's, but I'm delivering, you know, more to the point. I can learn and develop, but I just took a little bit longer. So yeah, I was quiet. I wouldn't say I was completely outgoing, but there was always part of me in the back of my head that was like, I think it was like 8 years old when I started having thoughts, you know, and I thought, is there something maybe wrong in my own head? But obviously being trans at that age is like, I didn't even know what transgender was,
Yeah.
and if you'd seen it on the TV, people were just being vilified that like it was cross dressers or whatever it was. And so at that time, it was kind of hard to understand what it was. It was always something that ended up going to the back of my head. But yeah, it was a quiet, I wouldn't say it was bashful, but it was quiet.
Yeah. How did those thoughts manifest in how you showed up in the world? Like in terms of your sense of self, how did you deal with them?
Put a mask on it, like most
Right.
people do, and just tried to fake, I suppose, what I was being, and just sort of, you kind of think you kind of have to follow the tradition. And it's a
Yeah.
thing that's quite common in Northern Ireland, is people following traditions, and yes, it was a struggle because you're putting a mask on it. And like I remember there's stuff that maybe was doing or maybe it was where I was like, this isn't really what I want to wear, but I'll wear it anyway, that type of thing. And I never outrightly said it, but I was like, I can remember one time seeing like outfits like the girls were wearing, like dresses and stuff like that in my head. Fuck, I would love to wear that, at some point. But yeah, it was like you put a mask on it and you try to sort of just move on with life, but always in the back of the head, there's always that thing that's sort of going on in the back of my head.
Yeah. It's hard to shift, and we don't have the language or the knowledge to vocalize it at that point until much later. I'd love to hear about teenage years. Obviously, it's a really formative time for many of us. With the backdrop of those thoughts going on, being in a mainstream school against the odds, against where you wanted to go. What were teenage years like?
Teenage years were a bit odd. You had your friend circle, you were around with me. Like, I still was a bit sort of shy and bashful. Like, there would have been elements where I was bullied,
Yeah.
whilst I was in sort of secondary school. But those moments where you just try and process with what you have at the time. But yeah, teenage years were a bit of an odd one because obviously puberty starts to kick in, and it's a bit of an uncomfortable feeling for some people who just don't feel comfortable within that puberty. And I remember one of my oldest friends who I came out to first before I publicly came out to my therapist with said, when we were in secondary school, I kind of knew there was something about you, but I never said to you because I wanted you to put the words in your own mouth because I didn't want to put words in your mouth. And I respected that because at the end of the day, I needed to say it myself before someone could put words into my mouth. But they seen the bashful side of me. They seen me, like I might have said something like, so there would be an example where maybe was me and a couple of other boys in the class, and say there was a couple of girls walk past, the boys might have been saying something like, she's got a big arse or she's got big boobs, and more stereotypical stuff where I was like, I was saying actually she's very pretty and what she's wearing is very nice and I would like to wear that, but then I would backtrack very easily from it, sort of saying, actually I didn't mean to say that because I was trying to sort of hide away
Yeah.
from it. So there was mixed feelings, there was mixed emotions and feelings going through that kind of the male puberty element of it. But again, I didn't really realize what transgender was at that time. And I think actually my first real exposure to a trans person, I think they were referred to transsexual at that time, was Nadia from Big Brother, if you remember Nadia.
Yeah, for many of us, Nadia was
Yeah.
the first person.
She was, and she was a trailblazer in her own journeys as well. At the time that she was on Big Brother, it was a big talking point, and she won it. She did actually win it, and that was a good example of someone just being themselves. And I think after that kind of made me realize in my own head that maybe there is something out there, but I was still in that kind of small, narrow community where it was kind of
Mm.
hard to access information that you need. And yeah, there was really no support at that point because it took me to leaving even university before I could really
Mm.
explore. But things like dating and stuff like that was quite difficult for me because whilst I did date someone for a very short space of time, just didn't feel comfortable. It didn't feel natural to me. So there was a lot of nervousness there. I know there's like teenage elements there. It's like your first boyfriend, your first girlfriend might be a little bit nervous because you're going through the emotions and so you are. But it was difficult in that rural community to find your group of friends or your group of support that you want to call your chosen family near enough that can kind of support you for who you are. So it was difficult to find that because it didn't really exist where I was.
Yeah. When did you first find it?
When I started to explore the world a little bit, so I would have did a lot of solo travel back in the day when I left, obviously university and went into corporate life, and when I started to visit places like Barbados, the Maldives, Indonesia, Australia, and all that, and kind of realizing that there was support groups out there and there was people that existed, it sort of made you realize that there is more to life than being the kind of, in the small one town with the one bar, the one shop, and all that stuff, and yeah, I would say it was really when I was in my job with Kainos, which would have been what, 9 years ago, is when I started to really find my feet a little bit and realize then I had at one point I was like, right, I need to actually be myself here, and now in an environment where there is support around me, and let's see where it goes from there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Taking it back to university, what did you study and kind of what was the goal? So IT was kind of what you had in mind. What did uni look like?
Uni looked like fun, and it was fun. I studied computer science in University of Ulster in Coleraine for
Uh,
4 years. Um, it was fun. I met people from very different backgrounds, different nationalities, and that's when I suppose that would have been one of the first instances of really meeting people from different backgrounds. Because before I went to uni, I would have went to college, and college was still in quite that small local community. But going to university really exposed you to people who were not just country people, but city people, and even people who didn't live in Northern Ireland who had just come to Northern Ireland to study. So, yeah, university was fun. I did work during it as well. I worked as a baker part time, so it kind of helped pay the bills for student life. So it did. But yeah, uni was a lot of fun. Lots of partying, lots of probably doing things I probably regretted later on. But we all live and learn, so we do.
and we have to do them, right?
We do, we do. My mum would kill me for saying it, but I remember there was one night I got completely blind drunk and didn't realize how drunk I was. It kind of really opened my eyes, so I did realize, okay, tone this down a little bit, especially if you're living by yourself in university. But yeah, you do like sometimes make mistakes, but you learn from them.
We do, and we don't stop making them.
No, we don't. We don't. We
I,
don't.
I certainly don't. So tell me about early career.
Early career was good. I started a job as a technical consultant in a company called kind of Software at the time, and I remember the interview quite vividly because it was quite an entertaining interview. Because the first round interview was grand; it was pretty basic, but the second round interview, which was the last round, was actually quite funny because I made all the panel cry, or well, most of the panel cry, because there was an ask of the interview person being interviewed to do a presentation. And at that point, we were going in for a technical role, and people were doing presentations in Java, people were doing presentations in .NET and programming. What I do a presentation on youth work. So I was like, if you can do any topic, I'll just do it in my youth work background. So there was a particular project that I was doing with the youth work stuff. I can't remember what it was. I think it was the raft project. We were doing it was having a laugh building a raft. Two of the interviewees who already told me after the interview, I made them quite emotional because they like were actually saying you as a pretty inspirational person because you're actually doing more than we did when we were teenagers, from a community background, so yeah, it was quite an interesting one. But they were like, that was probably one of the reasons why you got the job within the job that you got. But it was good. And I started to get exposure to customers, and customers started to gel to me. Some customers like me, some customers don't. It's just the world that I'm in. But those first kind of 3 or 4 years were kind of pivotal to help me sort of then transition into what I moved into my next company, which was Kainos, which I spent almost 10 years with, So yeah, early careers was good. It was a good opportunity to really prove from a career point of view I could be successful.
Yeah. The youth work, right? So from a young age, out there doing stuff that is volunteering, community focused, has that always been important to you?
It has because I had quite a hard social upbringing, just in generally because of challenges from a medical point of view. There was a youth club that I went to. It's quite funny actually because the youth worker for that area spotted me and they're like, "Yeah, that child there. What age is that child?" I can't remember what age it was. I think it was 14 at the time. And I was kind of trying to connect the dots with things. And she was like, "We need to bring this child to the youth council." Now, at that time, youth council age was 16 to 25. So it was. So I was obviously 2 years too young. But there was an exception made for me. So there was, and I kind of got involved with youth work from that kind of younger age, and it sort of helped me develop those kind of community skills in terms of
And
volunteering because you're kind of giving back to the community in some way. And I still talk to that leader who pulled me in and said, "Hey, we want to invite you into the youth council, even though you're 2 years too young for it. You can still come with your brother and contribute into it, and yeah, volunteering and that sort of community aspect is very important to me because it helps us identify who we are and knows that we have people out there who we can be around and thrive being around, and volunteering is a very it's a skill that people tend to forget about because you get so much out of volunteering. You might not be
Indeed.
volunteering for something massive, but just taking time out of your day can build up a skill set that you don't realize.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
often say, yes, it is about giving, but you
Mhm.
get so much more than you give from volunteering. Like, it's certainly enriched my life, particularly in the people that I've met as a result of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've met some incredible people as well. There's some people I've had laughs with, some people I've had crying with, some people I've had different emotions with, and yeah, it's all fun.
Yeah, yeah, it's a common. Do you know what? For people doing inclusion work, I'm. This is this is episode 79 of the podcast, right? Like, it's
Yeah,
and volunteering comes up again and again and again because it's just
yeah.
we're so predispositioned to get involved and to show up. I'd love to know: we're often shaped by our failures as much as our successes, right? Was there something that felt like a failure, either professionally or personally, that's turned out to be the making of the Lauren we know now?
I would say there was a failure in me when I feel like I wasn't progressing anywhere in my personal life, because I was so focused on my career that I wasn't really taking time for myself, and at that point it was a bit of a dark point in my life because there was a few things that happened, and I kind of felt like, I need to do something about this, or I'm probably going to do something that I regret. There was a time I was suicidal at that point, myself. Yeah, so that moment kind of realizing that, yeah, you need now to focus on your own personal life more than your career because I was running myself into the ground, whether it be burnt out or just completely overwhelmed or overloaded, So I kind of like, you really need to take time out for yourself here and realize who you are as a person. That probably was the turning point for me. And they say COVID changed a lot of people, or
Mm.
COVID people were putting weight on or whatever. I was losing weight during COVID, and I was realizing I need to be myself here. So yeah, COVID was a transformational time for me because it helped me it gave me a little bit of time to breathe. We were all kind of forced into a lockdown, and I
Mm.
was sort of busy leading a corporate life, and that corporate life was still there, but we were now doing it at home because everybody had to work at home, so there was a chance to breathe.
Yeah.
You weren't commuting between going to the office or coming home or whatever you were doing. You had a chance to breathe during the workday. I was like, yeah, that's actually, this is my turning point here to be in the Lauren I am now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it definitely was. Like, COVID was certainly the making of me in so many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely an opportunity to reset and realize my own destiny. As I say, it was like, it was that time I spoke to my GP to get, a bit of mental health support, and mental health support in Northern Ireland is not great. So it's not, but she did what she can to make sure I got some support, even if it was from a voluntary charity. And the support I got was from a voluntary charity. It was actually a charity called the Olive Branch, who offer free counselling to anybody who wants it in the area. They go off donations, so they do. And they don't get a lot of funding, but they mainly go off donations. So they make sure they pay their counsellors, but you go in, you can actually receive free counselling without paying for it, which
Yeah.
is a super thing to get.
Yeah. It sounds like counseling and therapy have been super important to you and you feeling free to be who you are now.
Absolutely. Counselling and therapy is very, very important I always say we all need a form of counselling and therapy at some point in our life, so we do.
Yeah, 100%. And I
Yeah.
was chatting to you about this with a friend the other day, and we often go for those things, go for those solutions when things are rough or when we feel that we need them. But actually, they can be such a preventative thing to dip into when we're feeling healthy and happy too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's lots of different things we can do out there to make sure we're kept happy. Yeah. There's more to life than there is in what people think, Big thing I could spend hours talking about is generational trauma within Northern Ireland. That's a whole different another kettle of fish.
Well, I mean, generational trauma is such a big thing, right? Particularly
It is.
for those of us that have boomer parents or older, and feeling that ability to express ourselves and not dampen and push down how we're feelings because it just wasn't really the done thing to talk about it.
Yeah, it takes a strong person to try and heal from generational trauma. And people sort of
Mm.
say, well, what is generational trauma? And like, there's so many different variations of generational trauma. Like Northern Ireland, one of the most common things that people talk about with generational trauma is the Troubles, the sort of divide between Protestants and Catholics at one point, and obviously there's peace in the country now. But even outside that, there still is a lot of generational trauma there where I know for my family specifically, one of the challenges that my family has is that we don't communicate very well. well.
Yeah, of
We
course.
communicate well in a sense when there's stuff happening outside the family and it's a talking point. But when it comes to something inside the family, it's difficult because people just don't want to acknowledge it. It's similar in my own personal circumstances with me coming out. There's people in my family that don't acknowledge it, and don't want to talk about it because they just want to pretend it doesn't exist, Whereas if it was happening outside the family, it would be the talking point of the group chat. So there is a lot of elements there of generational trauma, but it does take a strong person to actually stand up and say, I'm trying to heal from generational trauma. You have to do what's right for you at the end of the day because you can continue down that path of following traditions, but are you actually happy with what you're doing? Because at the end of the day, your happiness is what's more important than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. And I think, back to think about my own experience, I love my dad to bits, but hearing him say, I love you is something that I don't get to hear very often. And I think it does come back to that being able to be free with your feelings and emotions and being able to communicate. And so for me, I try and break that cycle by being very open with my feelings and telling my friends
Yeah,
and my chosen family when I love them all the time. How do you
yeah.
challenge your own generational trauma?
I would do something the same. You tell people you love them.
Mm.
I do have challenges with my dad. Deep down, I know he's a good man, but it's just a generational thing that's a struggle there. You just have to remember that you can't change a person's attitude. You can certainly, show your love and support, but you can't change that person. So for me, it is saying to your friends, yeah, you love them, you support them, and all that good stuff. So for me, it's just about showing up and being who I am, and yeah,
We've spoken briefly about your family before, and I know we're not going to
mhm,
talk too much about it, but when it comes to your family, it sounds like you are still continuing to show them so much love and grace and patience, even at times when that isn't reciprocated, and that says so much about you and the work and the way that you show up as well.
yeah. At the end of the day, your family, your blood family is your family at the end of the day. And yes, there are a lot of people within my community that would automatically just switch off
Mm.
from their family if they're just not being supported. I suppose my challenge is slightly different and not common from most people because in my scenario, whilst I know my dad, there is an element of support there. He's just not on board as much as my mum. My mum would have a lot more support than my dad, but they're still together. And in scenarios whenever you've got parents who one supports and one doesn't, usually the parents aren't still together and the parents are, single parents, so it's a bit easier to sort of just distract yourself away from them. But at the end of the day, I never want to close the door on those family members because as much as I probably won't need them, there'll come a time they'll need me and they'll realize that at the end of the day, I'm just a human being. I'm not any different than what I was. I might visually be different. I've got long hair, I've got different bits, parts of bodies that maybe aren't naturally they would see of me, but at the end of the day, I'm just being me. So it's important not to close the door, but it's important to keep those people at arm's length within reason, and just allow them in whenever they're being respectful. Having those boundaries is also important as well. And setting those boundaries is important because it's easy to go into an environment with your family and sort of say, hey, I'm coming for a visit. But setting those boundaries and setting those sort of, what's important to you and making people realize them is so important because, yeah, at the end of the day, you should never really close your door in your family because you never know when you might need them.
I think it's interesting for me to hear your point of view on it because, I have quite a toxic mum, for example. And so I made the decision to, after many, many, many moments of forgiveness and give and second chances and such, to
Yeah.
close that door. I made that decision. And
Yeah.
it's really important to hear that you feel very strongly to not do that. And I don't think there's a right answer. I think everyone has to do what's right for them and assert your boundaries, what's right for you. But I think the way you approach it is really, really beautiful and commendable.
Yeah, correct. What works for me might not work for someone
Yeah.
else, but it's important to have those boundaries in place, at the end of the day, because you have to be your best, and at the end of the day, my dad turned around to me at one point and said, I hope you're not doing this for someone else. And I was like, I'm doing this for myself
Yeah.
because I'm miserable. I'm not happy. I want to be happy. This is what my destiny feels like and it feels what's right for me. And one of the things I started to change was I started to change my dress sense, to feel wear stuff I wanted to wear. And I was buying a new wardrobe left and right, and I was seeing this opportunity to have this brand new wardrobe. I was fucking loving life because I was wearing skinny jeans, I was wearing tops, I was wearing stuff that was like, I feel fucking alive when I'm wearing this stuff compared to what I used to wear.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you can tell that you're living for you. Do you know what I mean? You
Yeah.
can tell that shines through. Lauren, my final question for this segment is looking back so far, what are you most proud of to date?
What am I most proud of today is just showing up and being me. I've proven myself from a career wise, I've proven myself from a social wise that I can be a human being. Yeah, sometimes I get things wrong. We all get things wrong at Watercolor, but we learn and we grow. When we get knocked down, pick ourselves back up and grow. One of my proudest achievements would have been getting my degree. Yes, I come out with a 2-2, but the fact I got my degree against the odds was incredible. And I still speak to the professor of computing who I was in at the time with, and he actually said to my mum at the time, that kid's going to go somewhere special. They might not have come out with a strong grade, but that kid's going to go somewhere special. Make sure you nourish that kid and keep nourishing that kid because they're going to be on to be very successful. That was probably one of my proudest achievements. A lot of people talk about university, but it felt more proud to me because I went against the odds and got something that everybody thought I would never get.
It's beautiful how you've had these random people in your life, like a
Yeah,
clinician, a tutor, say to your mum, nourish that child. Like that's
yeah,
really that child is going somewhere special. And look at you now.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm a version of my own success, and I just tell people, be yourself at the end of the day. Don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Don't.
The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. Are you ready for some quickfire questions?
Yeah, go for it.
What album, book, or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
American Pie movies because they're just so funny. They just don't make movies like that anymore.
I was watching the other night, I was watching the greatest movies of the 90s, and
Yeah.
my boyfriend got onto the subject of American Pie, and we were saying something similar of there's been nothing like it since.
No, it's not. That from a Watercolor point of view. From a music point of view, it's kind of like the Trampsy era or the Cascade era, where I just like to have a bit of a party and boogie, even if I'm not drinking alcohol.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And music is really important to you, right?
Very, very important. I have the craziest taste of music. I could listen to dance, pop, R&B, everything. There was a song I performed to at Christmas called Tits and Chicken, which was like grungy style music, and it's just so fun. Yeah, music's very important to me because it's a good way to switch yourself off from the world. I would, you talked earlier about Game Boy, switching on a Game Boy and not being connected to people. I would put on a playlist, put on my headphones, throw my phone away and listen to my playlist for about an hour, and I'm zoned out because I'm focusing on just a little bit of me time, a wee bit of meditation time.
Yeah. Yeah, and meditation looks different for all of us.
It does, it
Yeah.
does.
Yeah. What's a saying you live by and one that you'd put in the bin?
The one I live by now is follow your dreams, and the one that I put in the bin is don't follow the tradition.
Don't follow tradition.
Yeah, don't follow the tradition. Put the tradition in the bin and be who you want to be. So I put the tradition in the bin, and I would say follow your dreams.
What's been the best adventure of your life so far?
Was my traveling. I suppose yeah, traveling's been the best adventure because it's helped me explore different communities and different backgrounds. I spent 5 weeks traveling down the east coast of Australia. What an amazing time that was! Seen so many different sites. So yeah, that was an interesting adventure of my life. So it was.
What was your highlights from it?
Just seeing just a completely different way of living. Like, I started in Cairns, and I think one of the things I seen the first day they were advertising jelly wrestling, and I was like, I've never seen jelly wrestling before in person. I've heard of it, but there's this local venue that's just doing jelly wrestling, and I was like, that's pretty cool, you come across so many different people from backgrounds. Then I traveled to, I think it was Brisbane, spent a few days in Brisbane, spent a few days on the Gold Coast, spent a few days around Byron Bay, and then spent a few days around Sydney. Just seen so many different experiences and so
Yeah.
many different cultures. It was incredible. I want to go back. I do want to go back and do a bit more time in Australia.
Have you got any more travels coming up?
This year, I've got one. I'll probably go back till Winter Pride potentially in Grand Canaria. It's usually a bit of a riot, so it is. But I would like to do the Australian tour again, but do it during their summer, which is our winter, because obviously you get to escape the coldness of the UK and get into a bit of sunshine during the winter.
Yes, please. What three words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
Just being me.
Just being me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unapologetically, colourful, sparkly you.
Yep. That's more than three words, but yes, unapologetic, colourful, an unapologetic, colourful queen.
Unapologetic, colourful queen. I love that.
Yeah.
We'll give you all the words. Just being me, unapologetic, colourful queen. I'm here for all of those things. Let's fast forward a little bit. What exciting things do you have coming up?
What exciting things I've got? I've got new share, which you've probably seen in the public eye. I've been shortlisted for the British LGBT Awards for inclusive
Yeah.
campaigner. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what were you up for?
Inclusive campaigner.
And what does that mean to you when, because we don't do the work we do for the accolades, right?
We don't.
But it is beautiful to be recognised. I know when I was up for Trans Ally at the Trans in the City Awards where we met, like I know what that meant to me. I heard you on stage talk about what it meant to you. What does it mean to you to be nominated in the British LGBTQ Awards? Like that's massive, Lauren.
Yeah, it's massive. It's quite an emotional thing. Whenever I kind of seen the email coming through, I actually was pretty tearful with it because it kind of shows the work that I'm doing. People are seeing the incredible work I do and want to recognize it. And as you say, I don't go for recognition at the end of the day. It's nice to be recognized for the work that I do. And it's an incredible feeling, because it means that people have taken their time out of their day to nominate you for an award, and just to get that recognition, it's a very incredible feeling, and it's a very empowering feeling because you're doing good for the community and you're helping the community out, and you might actually be helping out people who struggle, because the amount of people that have interacted with me in the last while have said, your story has given me such inspiration because I can go and be who I want to be, and these are people who maybe are cis female or cis male, and maybe we're looking at a sense of direction of what they wanted to do with their career or their personal life, and I've had quite a few women recently reach out to me saying, you have been such an inspiration to allow us to open up to just be women, at the end of the day, and just be ourselves. And yeah, it's pretty cool to be recognized, and win, lose or draw, at the end of the day, to be recognized is such an incredible achievement. And I would always say my granny would always be proud of me for the achievements I've come up with.
Yeah, so she should, and you should. I hope you're proud of yourself as well. It's phenomenal, and I really, really hope to see you when you're over for it. It'd be lovely to see.
Yeah, we'll definitely arrange to meet up. So we will when we're over in, I think it's May, the 28th of May that it happens, and that will come around pretty quickly.
For sure, for sure. Well, listen, got everything crossed for you. Like it's so exciting. What brings you joy?
What brings me joy? Just seeing other people thriving, as well as I'm thriving, just seeing other people thriving as well, because it just means that people are being happy, and seeing other people thriving is important to me, so that brings me joy. What brings me joy to myself? Watching sometimes crap on TV, YouTube, or watching some shit on YouTube, playing a games console. There's a few different things, but yeah, the biggest thing that brings me joy is just seeing people thriving.
Yeah, absolutely. I love, lifting other people up. Have you got a practical takeaway for anyone listening wanting to create an inclusive space or project?
Yeah, well, this is a good one. So what advice I would give is understand where you're at the minute and what you're trying to do. So, for example, if you were in an organization that maybe didn't have an employee network group, maybe create like an employee network group for the community. So in Kainos, I didn't create it. There was somebody else created a group called Expression. So you could create like an employee network group where you might have other queer people within your organization who can come together and form like a committee. So that would be one example of practical steps to try and develop something in your career that includes inclusion. So you could be then lobbying for things like a change of policies to support same-sex parents. So if there was two men that were looking at the kids as maybe having parental leave that was maybe a bit more generous for those two men that were having kids, or stuff like that. Where you're fighting maybe to try and include a certain healthcare elements into the private medical insurance that's offered by the organisation, or bring in educational events into the winter course. So a lot of things I did was I brought self-awareness and educational events where I brought people in to talk about their own life stories and lived experiences. So there's a lot of things you can do, but the first thing is you could set up like an employees network group to sort of help collaborate and work with other people within your organization who maybe are in the same community as you.
Yeah, yeah. And if it's already set up, join it and get involved,
Darn it.
because my career has now been, the career I have now has been massively shaped by employee resource groups and staff networks.
Yeah, they're so important and they're so underrated. So they are, but they're there for a reason. And if they're there, yeah, join it and just sign up and become your local rep. If you're a big national company, become your Belfast rep, become your Edinburgh rep, become your Glasgow rep, and say, hey, I want to bring stuff to the whatever, because you might be doing stuff outside of work you might want to bring into work to help sort of promote stuff. So join up, sign up, and don't regret it. It all comes down to that volunteering element, and the volunteering is very, very important because you don't realize how much you can learn from it.
Yeah, and how much you develop from it as well. It's a massive opportunity for self-development and growth. Lauren, my final question for you is this: do you have any words of encouragement or wisdom for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
Have a good support network around you, and don't feel that you're alone. There are people out there that will support and love you for who you are, so it's just about finding your people. And if you're someone who's struggling and maybe trying to get some help and support, reach out to maybe a local community group, a local LGBT group, and just ask for support and help. Talk to your doctor, and different things. That's what I did. Having that kind of support network is very important. So yeah, find your circle of close friends who support you for who you are and nourish each other and support each other.
Lauren, thank you so much for spending time with me and for being a guest on Pause and Rewind. Again, I'm so glad that we met last year, and I cannot wait to see what's next for you, and fingers crossed for May for the British LGBTQ Awards.
Who knows? Let's see. Thank you for having me on the podcast. It's been absolute.
I've loved it. Thank you so much, and definitely see you soon.